What's up, guys? Welcome back. I am here today with the Flow Ninja, John Liu. John recently joined us to show us Flow Studio, his own creation, but today he's here to show us a little trick in Flow, something that just came out, something that I think actually he announced that he found, because I didn't see it on the blog. I didn't know that it was coming. I learned that it came from you, sir. So welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Why don't you take a second and just tell everybody a little bit about who you are?
Hi, my name is John Liu. I'm joining John from Sydney, Australia. My time zone is a little bit ahead of him, so I'm in very early morning mode with coffee. I do make Flow Studio. It's a tool for flow makers. When you have lots of flows or when you need to migrate them in different environments, Flow Studio has a lot of tools that will help. So that is, watch John's video, John and my video on Flow Studio.
Yes, I'll link that one in the description. Yes,
cool.
And so, okay, today we're going to talk about conditional triggers, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the thing that just came out. That's the thing that John just found. And if you're not familiar with conditional triggering, the best way I can put it is you know how conditions work in Flow, right? They say if this happens, then do this or else do that, right? And so now what we have the ability to do is actually, when we trigger something, put a condition right in the trigger and say, make sure that the trigger looks for a specific thing. And if it doesn't find that thing, do nothing, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, so that's a sum of what this is. Now John's going to take us through how it works in practicality. So John, go ahead, man, share the screen. The floor is yours.
Okay, I might quickly start on the history of what this is.
Okay.
A while ago, this is a much older tweet in April. It's actually April a year ago. That's how old it is. I talked about how, hey, according to the logic apps documentation, and because logic apps and Flow share the same underlying engine, but in the logic apps documentation, there is a thing called a trigger condition. This has been in the engine forever. It's actually here. Okay, so they say there is a condition that you can set on the trigger, and it looks like it's asking for some sort of Boolean condition. If the Boolean condition is not true, then the trigger will not run. So that was always in the definition. So this is not some sort of completely new hack. It's actually been in the engine for a long time. And back then I said, well, both logic apps and Flow do not have any sort of UI for you to set this. But even though it's an expression, there's no way to type it. So logic apps always has this cheat mode where you could just switch everything to JSON and then type anything you want. Now in Flow, you don't have that. You should get Flow Studio if you want the JSON God mode. But let me go back to what the history. So in logic apps, the way you will set it is you will switch to the JSON mode and you just type that expression into the actual trigger part of the thing. Now, so back then in April, I did this very quick tweet and say, okay, I have a SharePoint list. It's got a Boolean field that says yes and no. In the data in the back, when it triggers, you get a Boolean true or false. So it shows yes, no, but you get the value of true or false. And then I created quickly 4 items, just a title and yes, yes, no, yes. So it's 4 items. And then I say, well, let's create a normal SharePoint. This is a created or modified trigger, very standard on that list. And I just show what is the whole JSON body of that trigger. Then I went into, because I built Flow Studio, I added this condition into that trigger. Right? I basically wanted to know, well, if it works in Logic Apps, it should work in Flow, right? Let's try it out. So I do that kind of testing. So I put that in. It's basically saying, this is the expression, the trigger body. So that would be the item of the SharePoint item. Run on yes, that's the column name. And it's true. So we say if equals this value is true, then this will run. So I did that and I save, and magically it saves. I'm like, that's a good sign. And then I go and have a look at the flow runs. And the flow runs basically, and I kind of mapped onto which ID of the row it is. The first one, the second one, and the fourth one they all run successfully. The third one is never triggered. So in your all runs, it's not like it's failed or missing or anything. It's just not there.
Gotcha.
Right? Just completely not there. So so I thought, oh, that's interesting. Now and then the development that happened the last week or so, last week, I guess, by this time the video, is that we saw in the flow designer, this is actually that flow that I made back in April. You look at this is so old. That and we noticed that, oh, in the settings, the trigger condition now appears. There's a UI here. Now, there's a reason that this is quite significant, because when I artificially injected the trigger condition, there was always a risk that because it's not part of this UI, if I were to then reopen the flow, make some changes and save, it was going to remove that trigger condition. So it wasn't very reliable. You could kind of attach it and say, "Oh, look, it's wonderful," but you're always gonna add this flow, and then one day you're gonna save it, and the condition will be maybe removed because the designer doesn't understand it or expect it, and then you actually have a different behavior of how your trigger will work. So that was always well, that's a fun hack, and it does work. It works wonderfully. But let's not rely on it, because if it gets removed, your logic could be quite troublesome. It's really not what you want. Or sometimes I recommend to people that really want to use it that right after the trigger, you do a conditional check anyway. So you do a second condition check and say, if that is true, then I'm still going to terminate. So even if this trigger got deleted somehow, you still have the condition that will trap the flow and stop the running. So that was like a safeguard backup escape clause kind of.
Yeah.
Well,
and I noticed you can have multiple conditions there too. It looks like there's a full condition builder there. So if you're not good at writing expressions, it looks like you could actually put single conditions and stack them up.
Yeah, you can add lots of them, but there is unfortunately no expression editor. So you just have to be pretty good at expressions. But I do have some clever tricks, so we'll go through that. So so this is actually me just playing. I made it more interesting. I made it more crazy. But let's come back. In fact, let me just delete this bit first. We'll come back to this later.
Okay.
And the first thing you should do is you should look at the trigger body. And there's a few ways to do it. You could just get the list of items, which is what the SharePoint one is called. Different triggers have different things. But basically hover over that and put that in the compose, because we kind of want to see what the value of it really is. So you put that in compose, and you can hover over to check it is indeed trigger body, and then just run it once. And you can run it with any of the previous triggers. I just want to show. I want to kind of show you what that data look like, because that's almost where we start. So we look at this, and maybe we copy that whole thing out and put that into some sort of JSON editor. I use Visual Studio Code. I think Notepad++ is also very good. You want something that can read JSON. And if I move this up a bit, see down the bottom right, you select the type.
You can close that one, actually. Go ahead and minimize that.
Oh, yeah, okay. So down the bottom here, okay, let's get rid of that. In Visual Studio Code, you can select the type of this document. So right now, it doesn't know what it is. You just click this, and this little menu appears, and you just say, yeah, I want JSON. So that gives you some color coding, as well as this nesting. You can collapse things. So generally, you just want to quickly see. So this is a SharePoint item, and the column I'm after is this, run on yes. And then this is actually the a Boolean value, right? So it's either true or false. So just know that it's not a string. It's actually a Boolean. So I copied that, and then if I pop back here, and then my tip on how to build that expression is just use a compose button. So rather than this, say maybe we do in here, and we say equals, and then click on this. This always fights me. your body, and then you can type that. So that's the first part, and then it needs to be equal to true. So something like that, and you can insert it to check it is correct, and then that's pretty much the formula. So we can put that in here.
And so essentially what you're doing now is the same
add
thing,
sign
right?
file.
Okay, so that's what I thought.
Yeah.
You're doing the same thing in the compose that
Yeah.
you're gonna do inside of that actual
Yes.
condition space in the trigger now.
Yeah. In fact,
It just
you could
makes
run
it just makes it easier for people to build conditions, to build expressions
Yes,
there because there's
it
the builder.
is.
Yeah.
It is. And in fact, before you put it here, in fact, probably like this, while you don't have any trigger, it's good to just run this, right? Just run it again and say, is that the Boolean that I'm expecting?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So is that true? No, it's not true. And why is that? It's because I'm asking, is that value the same as true? But it's actually a false.
Right. You're asking it, is it true? And it's saying no, it's not true.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. So that's why it's valid. So that's actually the behavior I want, because basically I'm saying on this list, which is the triggering list, if this run on yes is not true, I actually don't want to trigger.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
Yep.
if I say with the update 05, only these two will trigger. These three will not run anything.
Yep. Makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, and copy into that. If you're not so good at this part, like the part where you can pick a column out, you could do it as an additional step. So maybe like even if you just click anywhere. No, let me. What's a good way to do this? Let me just see that. Oh no. Hold on. My dynamic content is not showing my options. Give me one sec.
But what are you expecting?
Well, it should show me all the columns on that SharePoint list.
Oh, from the created or modified?
Yeah, yeah. Here we go.
There you go.
Yeah. So I probably just had that open too long. So you could say, okay, run on yes is which one is that one?
Yep.
And then you could go to Pico. Pico is wonderful. I am kind of addicted to JSON, so I like looking at expressions. You might not be the same, but you do need this bit. So just use this to copy it out. You can't add it in here, but you
That's
can
a nice
use it to
trick.
copy.
That's
Yeah.
way better than having to install VS Code and copy all of that out and paste it there. I think this is actually a better trick for Flow users. That's
I
nice to
think
know.
so. I think
Yeah.
so. And there are some really tricky fields. Like for example, in this SharePoint list, I also enable versioning. So in the SharePoint list, you could have approved, draft, approved, and pending.
Gotcha.
So I include the versioning enabled from the list settings. And then say if I want to check the approval status instead, I will use this. I will look for the approval status, hopefully somewhere. There's a version number. Where is the approval status? Yeah, there we go. Content approval status. See, they have all these crazy names. And then if you look at the expression, this is crazy. This is not something that you will easily guess. It's a moderation status with a curly around it. It's a really strange name. So that's not something that you would just naturally know. You almost need to look at the data before you can say, oh, okay, it's got a weird name. Like if I go back here to the JSON, you kind of see it here too. See, all these fields are kind of system fields that have this little curly around it. So that's not, most fields you expect to look more like this. These are kind of special system internal fields. They look a bit silly.
Interesting.
But yeah, different ways, so kind of different tricks to help you. You basically need to find the name of that column, right? Because if you specify this wrong, it's not going to be matching against your live field. Yep. So then the expression won't work. So either way, you get to that. And another way to do that then is, right. So so that's the first part. We run on the yes and no. And then indirectly, I've kind of fallen into the second one I was going to do, which was instead of say running it on a yes or no, oops, wrong thing, we can say run on the moderation status, right? So we can tie
yeah.
it back into a SharePoint approval, and we say, well, let's only, it's gone. All right, let's see how good I am with it. Equals this trigger body. I'm gonna type this wrong, and then it's not gonna work.
No, I don't know. I
And
think you
I
got
think,
it.
and it's called pending, right?
I think
Trigger
you got it.
body. Yeah. I type this a lot. I actually think I
You,
could memorize.
I literally think if there's one person I trust to type out an expression from memory, it's you, sir.
I do look at expressions a lot. But
Yes.
yeah, so imagine a SharePoint list item. This is all about SharePoint. You have draft items that are pending, and
Yep.
then you could say if I added this, you'll put it back into pending. Let me just change something. Hello, one. So that's pending, and then you could do approve or reject. So this is SharePoint's approval. You could do approve, reject, or keep it on pending. Maybe you add a comment, but leave it
Yep.
on pending. So this kind of ties back quite nicely with SharePoint's approval, the building SharePoint
fantastic.
approval system.
Well, so
To
many
kind of
people ask me about conditional level, I'm sorry, column level triggering. And
yeah.
so this gives you that ability.
Yeah, so you could say, only if a column has a certain value, then
Yep.
you'll run.
Yep.
Another one that is quite interesting one is often say we build an automated trigger in SharePoint and it runs as the maker, right? So maybe it runs as a service account. And we want to avoid the situation where if the service account updates the same list, it has the potential to re-trigger the flow, which creates an infinite loop,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you keep
Mm-hmm.
updating, and maybe you're updating to the same value, but because there is a write, the trigger runs again, and then the workflow runs again. So
Right.
quite a drastic error that is could eat up all your runs very quickly,
Yep.
doing not particularly anything useful.
Well, you'd have to make sure that
So
once it triggers, you have to change that column value. That's just a necessity.
yeah, one of the other conditions that you might do is you just say, well, if the if not equal to the trigger body is modified by, which is the person's name, is not the email address of the service account.
Yeah,
So then the
that's a
service
bit
account
more
updating,
advanced.
yeah, will basically not trigger its own it's another run.
Yep.
So that's a tricky one. All right. We have more time. I want to do one more
Oh
demo.
yeah. Well, let's do one more. Let's go for it.
So that was the SharePoint trigger. Let's look at the trigger condition on a different flow. This flow is a super simple flow. It's a HTTP request and a HTTP response, and the response just says hi. Okay.
Okay.
And let me see if I have a trigger in here at the moment. I do. Okay, let me take that out for now. You might have seen it says John is cool. I
I
mean,
saw that.
in fact, put it over here. I do need it back later, and let me not test my memory again. But so it's got a few debugs similar. I'm trying to see what the trigger look like and so on. Let me just save that. I need to copy this. And one more tweak. By default, the HTTP request takes a post. I change it to a get. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
And that just means I can go to any web browser, paste the URL, and look, it says hi.
Okay.
And basically, you have Flow as a web server. Ta-da! That's your web
I've seen
server Flow.
this is how Steven generates his web pages on a fly using Flow.
It's hilarious. It's
I know, it's
wonderful.
crazy.
Why do you guys make this throwback? It's so amazing. Now, check out this. So we say, well, we can do, say, in the URL, we can say add another parameter called maybe John is cool. Let me just do that. And there are no trigger conditions yet, so the old flow is still running. And then, check this out. Check this out. I learned this new trick. So when you test, usually you say a previous run, right?
Yep.
But you can say, no, don't worry, I'll perform. Now,
Okay.
when you perform, it's not a button, it's just waiting. It's basically waiting for the next trigger.
This one is, yeah. This one right here is waiting for your
Yeah, it's just
HTTP
waiting.
request.
Yeah, it's waiting. But then because it's a web page, I could just go to it and then hit it. And then this immediately latches onto that run and then show me what just happened. So it's kind of a quick way rather than me exit, fund the run, and come back in. Now, in here, I wanted to show you. So in the trigger, if you scroll right down, there is a part on the queries. That's the additional query string I added.
Okay.
Right. So the output
and you just threw it in the URL. You just put it in the URL, not even in the
URL
flow.
just appended this new guy.
Wow. Okay.
Right. So then I say, well, okay. What if I write an expression that says, it's hating me. Don't worry, I have a trick. It's called Pico. I love Pico. Equals trigger outputs query John, and the value we're looking for is cool, right? So we're gonna take this. In fact, we'll take it with the question mark in the front, which we need in here.
The @ sign.
Yeah. So the @ sign is something in the engine. Every time you use an @ sign, it tells the engine that this next string is an expression. Now, in Flow, you usually don't see it because the Flow editor, when it pops up, it kind of says, well, you're building an expression anyway. So it kind of not show that. But the engine always expects an @ sign, which is why all the backstage stuff uses the @ sign. So let me throw that in, and then I'll save this. And then you'll see, this is so funny. So it's saved, and then I'm back on this. And if I hit the web page, it still says hi because this guy, John, is cool. And if we say John is not cool, it just doesn't do anything. Look, it's and it's like, no, you didn't say the magic word. I'm not gonna execute your nope.
I love that. I love watching you use Flow, John. It is like I learn so many new things every time. I love that.
So yeah, so 25 seconds. That was the last run. We're gonna come here and go, and maybe F5 3 times. And we're gonna come here 25 seconds of 43.
Refresh your page one time. There you go. And then
yeah, still 43.
Oh,
There's
still 40.
no new runs.
No new runs.
Because it didn't say the magic word, right? You gotta say John is cool. And then we'll run. Anyway, that's hilarious. You guys build such fantastic tools. So funny. Anyway, I wanted to basically, so if you think about it, if people are building nested flows, and you're worried that, maybe we want to add a few more protection around them. Maybe a single GUID that need to be included in the header. Otherwise, we don't even want the flow to run. Because, yes, you can run the flow and then check the condition and exit. But then your runs have all these flows that doesn't do anything, right? Like imagine I have a whole lot of early exits in here. Then it's also difficult to go back into that flow. So really being able to say, if the condition is not true, I don't even want it to appear here. That's really good for us because we really want to focus on the flows that's actually doing work, right? So you want to keep this as tidy as you can so you can go right back into the flow that's, doing the useful thing. So even that, I think is super, super nice. Just, all the rubbish code. Yeah, they just don't appear here.
I feel like I'm going to name this video now. I think I have to name it Protecting Your Flows with Secret Code Words.
You didn't say the magic word.
You did not say the magic word. You cannot run the flow. I'm sorry. That was awesome.
All right.
Cool. Okay, this was great, man. This is a wonderful introduction to conditional triggers. You guys should go test this out. Create your magic words that will allow flows to run or not. Make sure you follow John. I'm going to put his Twitter and his blog and all that goodness down in the description. So his Twitter is his blog most of the time. So you'll see when he was showing you where this information lived, where'd he go? His Twitter. So that's the place really to follow him. That link's below. If you guys got some value from this, go ahead and click like. Make sure and subscribe so that you don't miss another video. Much love from us. See you in the next one.
Bye.